Next item that general interest was, how do you stay in touch with the community? How do you actually create a community around your shelter? How do you communicate with them? How do you get in touch with them and so on? How do you work with other shelters that may be in your vicinity or as part of the community? So you want us, this is, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this is, so I'll speak mostly to the communicating with other shelters, working with other shelters part, because honestly, that's a lot of what I end up doing. That becomes a little bit more of an internal task, right? So this isn't as much reaching out to the wide world, donations, things like that, but it's simply sort of expanding the walls of your organization, and first recognizing, forgetting about the technology part for a second, that the challenges that we're all facing in animal welfare are community level problems. And I think that folks in this room who, thankfully you all had the wherewithal to take time out of your busy schedules and come all the way here, are probably aware of that. But sometimes it's hard to remember that when we're back home. And sometimes to be honest, some people haven't realized that yet, right? And so what can we use technology for to bring us, as sort of hokey as it might sound, to bring us together in these endeavors? I'm going to talk about this platform twice today, but it's important. Who uses Shelter Animals Count? Awesome. Very awesome. That's great. That's great. One of the things that we always recommend people do at the community level is get on Shelter Animals Count, start using it, but also use the coalition builder. Who's used the coalition building tool in Shelter Animals Count? Okay, some of you, not as many. Brief explanation, and Sarah Kent can smack me in the face if I get it wrong. It's a tool to bring your data together with your friends, not sharing it necessarily with the wide world, but a way for the community, in this case, maybe it's the municipal shelter with the 501c3, with some rescue groups and so on, to say, how are we doing? How are we doing with our goals? The data side of things only really matters if it's measuring progress or maybe stagnation toward a goal. So I think that Shelter Animals Count is a great way to work together with your community in that way, with the other organizations in your community. Going a bit beyond that, it's actually not too dissimilar. It's not from what you might do within your own organization, right? So we have to communicate with each other. Who uses Slack? Slack. So Slack is it's a communication platform. You can, for those of you who have not used it, this is what it looks like. So, you can set up essentially on the left. I think of them as 1990s, as it sounds. Essentially rooms, or communication channels with certain groups, certain people, and things like that, and manage that communication. So, again, going back to working with the different organizations, different stakeholders in your community, it's a really efficient tool to do that, and to keep communication in one place. This is a little bit of an aside, but it's an important one. It's okay to have communication and technology policies in writing for your organization. Who has those? Yeah. So some of you, which is great. And so it's okay to say, you know what, this is not a commercial for Slack, this is just an example. We're gonna use Slack for this kind of communication, and we're gonna use Maddie's Pet Forum for this kind of communication, and so on and so on. That certainly helps with maintaining that community and maintaining the sort of internal work you're doing, because it eliminates the inefficiency of like, oh, I didn't get the text. Did you send that email? It's like, it drives me nuts.
Just again, not a commercial for Slack, but just so you understand what it is, because there's a reason it's one of the fastest growing productivity tools. It's basically think of it as an instant messaging system where you can talk to one person directly and no one else can see what you're saying, and that comes in a feed on your computer or on your phone. You can do it from your phone. So you'll receive a message on your phone that is just like getting a text or any other instant message, but it's in Slack and you can reply. And the record is always there, so you can go back and find things. Or you can make a group chat, so you're talking to a group of people, or you can create a group around a particular project that you're working on. So it can be adoption, and it could have all your adoption people, whenever you talk into that, they see on their phone or on their computer. And they can also manage what happens. It could ping them that a new message is them, or it could just be something that they can go back and check whenever they want. Or they can be pinged when their name has been specifically mentioned. And you can share files, and you can share videos, and it creates, and it's searchable. So if you wanted to say, what happened to that person's application that we were talking about a year ago, you can find it instantly. It's all on Slack. And so it's this very, very fast-moving, dynamic way to talk to one person, to talk to a group, to talk about a subject. You can invite someone from outside of your organization to be a part of a Slack group. And it really is a useful tool for sharing communication and sharing information.
And I think an important point that Mike mentioned is that it eliminates the need for a lot of email. I mean, we all feel we all get overburdened in email. This is a much less intrusive way, and it is much easier accessible, and you have things in context when you look back for it later.
Did you have a question?
Yes. What is the difference between that and Facebook Messenger? Because I'm pretty sure everybody in here has Facebook.
Yeah.
Then, I mean, my organization, we have 2 people and about 6 volunteers. And I'm just overwhelmed with all these websites, that I need to have to keep up with the data and Trello and now Slack and our quick Facebook page. And I'm like, okay, who's going to come and help me do this?
Thank you for bringing that up, by the way. So what Angela asked essentially is, why the heck are you telling me to do another thing with all this technology? I already have Facebook and so on. And it's a valid point. I think the big picture point is, and David has said this before, if you have a system that works to get whatever you need to get done, and it's, as simple as, hey, I just told, John Smith down the street to do it, and it happened, and that's the most efficient system, then you have a system. Using technology for the sake of using technology is, I think everyone here would agree, is a really bad idea. The items that we're suggesting are by no means prescriptive. They're tools that have worked for lots and lots of people to make operations more efficient, and everything so far is free, So if you already have a system that works, use it. To your specific question, the other question that Angela has is, how is Slack different than Facebook Messenger? Facebook Messenger is akin to sort of a text messaging platform with the sort of group messaging abilities and things like that. And again, if that works for you, that's great. Slack allows for just a lot more flexibility in terms of setting up different channels, including other items, so attaching links and files, and having all of that, as David said, all that work in context, where Messenger usually is not. It's not quite as effective, and it's easy to go back and say, oh, when we did that adoption event last spring, you can't go to your spring 2017 adoption channel and check that quite as easily. Does that help answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, and don't worry, you don't have to do anything.
Wait. Sheila, yeah. Yeah. You don't. Okay, go ahead.
Just one comment on this. I would propose that all of us in this room, in one way or another, are constrained by process. You could think of what you're doing like an assembly line. And in your case, there's 6 of you. You said you go to the local pound, you pull these dogs, maybe cats also, and do you transport or you try to find homes for them?
Both.
Both. So any of us, and so that's a very different organization than somebody here who is from a very large shelter, for example. But all of us can look at what we're trying to do from a systems perspective and say, somewhere along this line, there's a bottleneck. There's something that's constraining my ability to do more, to save more animals, to be more efficient. The technology ought to be brought to bear on the bottleneck, as opposed to this is new and cool and it's better than Facebook Messenger because it has X and Y and Z features. And so I would propose that any of us could just put down a piece of paper and sort of map out our organization and also point to the piece of the process that is constraining us. And it's that situation where you should reach out, you should look for solutions that exist that somebody else has already used. APA, for example, massive foster program, right? It's a huge piece of what they do because they have so many of these big dogs that don't do well in the shelter. So it makes sense that they were to find something like Trello to try to attack that because that became a real constraint for them.
So just shifting gears here a little, a lot of questions were also about communication with the community at large. What tools do you use aside from the obvious Facebook and so on, and how do you deal with all these comments that come in, not all of which are positive? So anyone wants to attack that?
I can start that from what I've been taught from the wonderful Sharon Fletcher there in the back. In terms of social media, we at Maddie's Fund don't always get positive feedback on the posts that we give, and I'm sure how many of you can sympathize with that? Anybody in the audience? We get negative stuff every so often. And this is something that we deal with and we talk about on a regular basis. So when a post comes in that is negative, it gets sent to the people who that topic is relevant to, and we have a discussion about, do we respond to this post or do we ignore it? And is it something that if we respond, this person is going to listen to us and have a good conversation, or is this someone who's just kind of ranting, and if we respond, they're going to keep responding back for the next never ever stop. And in some situations, we're going to end up deleting and blocking people from posting. And so that question isn't really about using technology, but that's how I was taught to manage. Sharon, did I do okay?
So I think there's definitely a technology angle to it, though, because in this day and age, things propagate so much faster. We all heard about the fake news and so on, and unfortunately, these platforms, the social media platforms, allow people to repost and spread things that may not be correct. So I think it's incumbent on all of us to try to make sure that we understand what goes on in our community that relate to us. Make sure you understand, follow what's going on out there, and make sure you actually respond to things that before it gets out of hand. I don't know if anyone.
Yeah, it's, as Lars said, a feature of these technologies are now people, and large numbers of people can talk to us and we can talk back to them. And the question is, how much effort do you put into that? You should definitely have someone in your organization who, depending upon the size of your organization, might be more than one person, who is the voice. And I think you need to take seriously when someone is saying something negative to you, on Facebook, because it's so easy to spread, so easily spread, and to spread out on Twitter, that unless you, like Sheila said, you really think this person is just maybe a little bit nutty and is not even worth the time, because you're just going to add fuel to the flame. With Adopt a Pet, we have a lot of people that talk to us. We have a big Facebook presence. We get lots and lots of emails, and I think I'd be correct in saying our experience is that you should talk back when you can. And even if someone is saying something negative, frequently it's very easy for someone to just to pop off. But when a human being responds and says, wow, I'm so sorry, this makes me feel bad and I want to help you, so many times people are just so happy to get a response. And they feel heard, and now they feel okay, and now they feel vindicated. And so sometimes it's just worth that one response just to see, is it that, or are they just now going to pile on? But I think that is sort of the good and the bad of social media is bad things can be spread about your organization very, very quickly. And so it's worth a little bit of effort to just try to put out a fire and have someone who's good at making people feel heard. Because a lot of time that's the only thing that someone is talking to you. They just want to feel heard.